Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, welcome to the show where we don't sing it, we bring it. Help us out and click subscribe to show your support. Are you sick and tired of dropping $60 to $100 every time somebody comes out with a new wrestling video game? Stop immediately. Go to Wrestler Unstoppable, available exclusively through Facebook. You can create a wrestler, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, even build your own corporation, all included in Wrestler Unstoppable, available now to all Facebook users totally free. If you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family and you want your name in the shout-outs like my buddy John in Texas, then jump on our Patreon page at patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast. Sign up today. Don't forget, we have loyalty rewards. If you are a $15 a month contributor, you can host an episode with me. If you are a $7.50 a month contributor, you can get entered into a drawing to also host an episode with myself. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. If you've got questions, comments, anything you'd like for us to touch on in a future episode, don't hesitate. Pick up the phone. Call the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160 and let us know what you'd like us to talk about in the future. And please stop by our homepage at frowrestling.com and show us some support. You can check out our sponsors there and get some cool information. So jumping into the news tonight, the first thing we got to do is talk about AEW. I'm sorry, I've been watching wrestling my whole life, and I can tell you right now, I have seen very few matches in my life that really were captivating from start to finish and put on the clinic that we saw last night from Bryan Danielson and Hangman Adam Page for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. 1 hour draw, incredible match, one of the ones that I'm sure is going to be nominated for Match of the Year, and rightfully so. There have been a lot of great matches on AEW programming that could easily be put up for that distinction. The concern and the celebration that I think needs to be discussed is, yes, they hit a home run with the show. Okay, I'm not taking anything away from the show. What I am concerned with is this is now the second time that a major opportunity for an AEW World Championship match has gone to a time limit draw. And I don't know if Tony Khan is trying to capitalize on the 1980s schmaz ending kind of thing where, there's no clear-cut winner and all that kind of stuff, or if this is for a greater purpose. But at the end of the day, I'd really like to see somebody stop going to these draws and have some definitive wins and losses. And look, if you don't want Hangman-Page to drop the belt so soon to Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, whatever you want to call him, that's fine. Then don't book him in the match. Hold off on that until you're ready to give that to him if he's eventually going to get that opportunity. If he's never going to get that opportunity, don't strategically position him in a way to do so. Same thing with CM Punk. CM Punk coming out on Dynamite and Rampage and talking about how he wants a shot at the championship. I get it, but either we're going to push WWE stars as main attractions to the program or we're not. If we're going to push them as main attractions to the program and make them legitimate champion contenders, at some point one of these WWE guys has to go over. You can't sit there and act like WWE guys, because they're WWE guys, are incapable of winning AEW World Championship gold. And I'm not talking about going back to all the way to Chris Jericho winning it at the beginning, but since Jericho, you had Jon Moxley have a run with it, and most of the reign has been Kenny Omega. And now Hangman Page. And I get it, they're solid stars too, but you're taking people who literally headline WrestleManias and you're having them go to time limit draws to guys who really, other than their AEW success prior to AEW, had nothing of note. And I'm not trying to knock on Hangman Page. He was an up-and-coming talent in Ring of Honor. He did very well for himself, but he's not a WrestleMania main eventer, certainly not yet. So taking him to a time limit draw, yes, it builds some credibility for his character going forward, and I love that angle. And if this was the first time limit draw we had, I'd be fine with it. We just did one of those with Kenny Omega 2-3 months ago. So what should have happened is that original match should not have been a time limit draw. If you're going to have a schmaz ending, don't have it be a time limit draw. Back then, you should have had the Elite or somebody get involved so that one had a horrible ending, and people would have been upset about it. But when you have your second time limit draw in such a short period of time, that sends the wrong message, just my opinion. At the same time, I don't want to take away from the match. The match was off the freaking chain. unbelievable, incredible, nonstop action, hard-hitting, high-flying, the grappling, the ground moves, all that stuff, all the high spots you're looking for, the near falls where you legitimately thought it was coming to an end multiple times. And what more could you possibly ask for? They did an incredible job, and AEW deserves a lot of credit for giving their talent the opportunity to go out there and just wrestle. Something WWE doesn't do. There was people making fun of WWE the other week because SmackDown had a grand total of like 16 minutes of wrestling, and the FTR tag team match on AEW Rampage that week had like twice that amount or something like that, or went longer than that, or whatever it was. And they're not wrong. That's a perfect assessment to look at the difference between these two companies. WWE is an entertainment company who thinks that the best way to push ticket sales and draw in an audience is to put on this conversational, sometimes comedic, sometimes emotional verbiage that goes back and forth between the talents. And that's not what draws in wrestling fans. Yes, you may be able to retain the mainstream segment of your audience, which is about 2 million people. But you're never going to get back to that 7, 8, 9 million people you had back in the Attitude Era if that's the path you take. And these billion-dollar contracts with other television agencies are not going to continue to come to your way if you don't put out a more significant contribution. WWE can't do that if they don't start to see how AEW is taking a ground-up approach, starting at the basics, getting people to wrestle, and getting fans to turn the channel to their programming because of it. Now, that being said, the Winter is Coming edition drew 948,000 viewers on TNT. That was up over 8% from the previous week that only had 872,000 viewers. Dynamite, 18 to 49 demographic, drew a .31 rating. That's down a little bit. So the key demo is down a little bit. So there are some concerns, not a ton, but there's some concerns. And Jim Cornette often gets blasted for his, sometimes insane statements he makes, but he is not wrong. Neither is Eric Bischoff when they both critique AEW from the perspective of you have brought in these incredibly talented, big-name performers, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, and a host of other WWE cast-offs, no offense, that's what they are, and it hasn't changed the ratings. They've been hovering in that 800,000 to 900,000 range for the majority of the year. A couple pops here over 1 million, the Punk premiere and things like that, but generally speaking, for the amount of time, money, and effort put into Punk and Danielson, you would expect a much bigger increase, at least at this stage of the game. They've been there for a few months now, and we're just not seeing that. It's somewhat concerning that they're not getting a bigger return on the investment in those characters. But, look, we'll have to wait and see how things pan out over time. But right now, I hope AEW continues doing what they're doing, because I think it has the opportunity. It really provides a path for them to really take advantage of things. Now, some people ask me, why in heaven's name would they do such a great job of building up this Danielson match with Hangman-Page and then not give him the championship? It seemed like the natural progression. And the reason I believe that is the case is because, yes, Danielson as a heel and going through the Dark Order and then taking the belts from Hangman-Page would have been amazing. But nothing is going to be more butts in seats, as JR would say it, than seeing MJF take that championship. And I think all of us would agree it is time for MJF to be the AEW World Heavyweight Champion. If you put the belt on Bryan Danielson, now you have locked the belt to a heel, and you can't strategically position MJF in that position. I expect MJF to somehow come out of the feud with CM Punk without being scathed for his reputation and being the number one contender to the championship. I don't know if that's defeating Punk, which I don't necessarily want to see that either. But if you think about it, if you have Punk lose to MJF, whatever the methodology of the loss is, then you can move on to MJF splitting from Wardlow, setting up the opportunity for MJF to get a world championship and take the belt from Hangman Page. Whereas CM Punk, where does he go from there? Well, you got to have a great storyline for Punk, and I think there's one that's been waiting since he came to AEW, and that's Punk and Bryan Danielson, and we need to see that match. And yes, we've seen little tidbits of it in WWE, but I mean a legitimate build to a great program with the two, and I think both of them would like that match to take place, especially since even though they're both from WWE, very different experiences and perspectives of WWE. Bryan Danielson being very respectful of his former employer, CM Punk quite the opposite, having nothing but disdain for his previous employer. So it'll be curious to see how that plays out over the next couple months, but AEW better be careful how they book all this stuff, because MJF, where it is on WWE's radar and the network's radar, which tells me that in 2024, when his contract comes up for negotiation, WWE is going to be a major player in trying to sign MJF. He is young. He's got a long career ahead of him. Where WWE, I will be looking at the kind of money that are being thrown at people like Jon Moxley, Roman Reigns. You have to bring in the best heel in the business, and let's be honest, MJF is the best heel in the entire professional wrestling world. The only person right now, honestly, that I feel like comes even close is actually Bryan Danielson. Surprisingly, I didn't expect to be able to say that. I think he's as good at it as almost anybody, but MJF is just on a whole nother stratosphere when it comes to being that arrogant, cocky heel character, and I think that's what WWE is going to go for, and they better make a big money play. No jerking around, no try your time in NXT before making it to the main roster. No, this needs to be a call up directly to the main roster, main event program, and probably a WWE championship very early in his career if he decides to go that route and go to WWE. At this point in time, I don't know that he'll do that because Tony Khan is very good to him. I'm sure he takes care of him financially, and I'm sure when the contract does come up for negotiation, Tony Khan's not a dumb man. He's going to know WWE's going to be all over it, and he's probably going to throw a ton of money at him to keep him. And who could blame him? You know, you're talking about one of the best, talents in the business. If I was Tony Khan, put your money where your mouth is and keep him. Somebody else he's going to have to negotiate contracts with is FTR. FTR's contracts come up in 2022, and we've heard this from way back in WWE days. They want to be regarded as one of the, if not the greatest tag team in the history of the business. They're challenging the Rock and Roll Express at a show coming up. They're going to be having a feud with the Briscoe brothers. They've got the thing going on with Phoenix and Penta for the AAA Tag Team Championship. These guys want to go all over and do a little bit of everything, and they've even made it clear that in 2022, they want to go to New Japan Pro Wrestling and win the IWGP Tag Team Championship. And why not? AEW and New Japan have had a great working relationship for several other things. There's no reason that that's not something that couldn't be worked out. And let's be honest, if you're New Japan, you should do the right thing and give them at least a short run with those belts. Now, if you really want to bring in attraction and make it work on both the Japanese fan base and the American fan base, have FTR win those championships from whoever, depending on when the match takes place, and then have a feud to start with the Guerrillas of Destiny and have the Guerrillas of Destiny take the belts back here in the United States. That would be incredible, too. In my opinion, two of the best tag teams in the world right now. I'm a huge Guerrillas of Destiny fan. So hopefully we get to see that at some point in 2022. Speaking of New Japan Pro Wrestling, the Wrestle Kingdom card is out, at least as much as it can be at this point. Night 1, Tuesday, January 4th. Get New Japan World. Watch the matches. They're going to be incredible. From the kickoff show, the New Japan Rambo Battle Royal will take place. The 4 finalists are going to compete in Night 2 for the King of Pro Wrestling 2022 trophy. Then other matches on the night, you've got the Bullet Club, Kenta El Phantasmo and Taiji Ishimori. You're going to take on Hiroshi Tanahashi, Rocky Romero, and Rizuchi Taguchi. You've got Ingobernables de Japón, Sanada, Bushi, Tetsuya Naito taking on the United Empire, Will Ospreay, Jeff Cobb, Great Khan. You've got Sho versus Yo, the former tag team partners. Katsuyori Shibata, we mentioned on our last episode, returning to the ring. They have not yet announced his opponent, but whoever it is, it should be an exciting opportunity to see him return to wrestling for the first time in a legit match since 2017. The Never Openweight Championship, Night 1. Evil will challenge the current champion, Tomohiro Ishii, for the IWGP Tag Team Championship. Members of Chaos, Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi, are going to take on the Dangerous Tekkers, which are the current tag team champions, Zack Sabre Jr. and Tai Chi. The IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship, the current champion, El Desperado, is going to defend against Hiromu Takahashi, who just finished winning the Best of the Super Juniors tournament. And then for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, Kazuchika Okada challenges Shingo Takagi for that belt. Now, that is a huge part of Night 1, but it leads into Night 2 because whoever wins that World Championship match is going to headline Night 2. Night 2, January 5th. The winner of Okada and Takagi, the champion, will defend against Will Ospreay, as the three of them were the ones who traded the IWGP Championship or opportunities for the championship all throughout 2021. They're going to start 2022 by making that championship have a clearly defined undisputed champion, and it should come on Night 2 and should be an incredible back-to-back World Championship defense sequence. No disqualification match night 2 for the IWGP United States Championship. Hiroshi Tanahashi is going to challenge Kenta. You're going to have Jeff Cobb versus Tetsuya Naito, Sonata versus Great Okan. Stardom is going to have a special attraction match. Mayu Iwatani and Starlight Kid are going to take on Tam Nakano and Saya Kimitani. Should be a great match. The women don't get an opportunity to be showcased on New Japan programming often, so it'll be great to see how they perform on the big stage. We mentioned earlier the winners of the Battle Royal from the previous night will go on for the Provisional KOPW 2022 trophy. There'll be a three-way match for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship. There'll be the Mega Coaches, Rocky Romero and Rizuchi Taduchi, against Bullet Club, El Phantasmo, and Taiji Ishimori, and they're also taking on Flying Tiger, which is Tiger Mask and Robbie Eagles, who are the current champions. And for the Never Openweight Six-Man Tag Team Championship, Chaos members Hiroki Goto, Yo, and Yoshihashi will take on the House of Torture, the current champions, Evil, Yujiro Takahashi, and Sho. The top to bottom, both nights' cards are going to be incredible. If you don't know who some of those stars are, look them up on YouTube, for heaven's sake. You're missing out on some of the most incredible wrestlers in the world if you're not totally tuned in to New Japan Pro Wrestling. Wrapping it up tonight, got to have a comment about it. Kevin Owens re-signs for a multi-year deal with WWE for reportedly between $2 and $3 million per year. It's about time. Now, here's my concerns. The concern is he does not have a no-cut clause. This is the problem Braun Strowman had. Braun Strowman signed a big contract, and then he was able to be let go. And if we've seen anything, that this is just a situation where WWE is postponing the inevitable. A $3 million contract on somebody like Kevin Owens, I don't see him making it to the end of that contract. I hope he does, but I don't see that happening. Then again, they've brought such an influx of WWE talent to AEW recently. Maybe he thought to himself, you know what? If I go there, I'm just going to get lost in the shuffle with all this influx of talent. I stay with WWE, get a great contract until they cut me loose, and then maybe I'll be a free agent later. He said in his statement, he says, I'll just say that my contract still ends on January 31st, not 2022. I will still be with WWE for several years. The decision was pretty easy because it was the best thing for my family. And I appreciate that statement because that's what it should be all about. And clearly that's where his focus was. This is an opportunity to really set himself up financially and be able to be ready to go for the foreseeable future. And, I understand some people are like, what more does he have to do in WWE? Well, obviously quite a bit. He's never been WWE champion. He's been Universal champion, but for a very short period of time. Lost that to Goldberg and what was complete nonsense. His character was so over and should have had a longer run. So hopefully they give him some championship opportunity in the near future. But at least what we know for sure is he will be with WWE for the foreseeable future. Good luck, Kevin Owens, on this contract. And hopefully WWE's booking team figures out a great way to keep him a part of the program in a meaningful way and doesn't make him essentially a upper mid-carder who just challenges for a belt every now and again and never wins anything. That's what some people's fear is, because those who really appreciate Kevin Owens' work don't want to see any more of that. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll run down all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks, as always, out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing any music or sound effects we use in our show. Today's show is sponsored in part by Beazle Game. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this game by Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com, clicking the icon in the middle of the screen to pick up your copy today. If you're looking for your next career move, you're considering college, university life, or you just need some formal training for your next career decision, go to our sister website at frolifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs, as Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Frolick, better known as Dr. Fro, and I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us tonight. And until next time, take care, everybody, and have a great night.